And so that was Resident Evil 4 Remake. Also, I gotta say, I do appreciate the screen here for after beating the game. Obviously, a homage to the original, which had very, very similar as well. I'm recording this a couple of days after having done the actual main game. I wanted a bit of time to kind of condense my thoughts into what I make of this game. I wanted to make sure I spoke as kind of accurately and as none kind of rambly as possible. And funnily enough, what you're seeing right here, I think is actually a really good analogy for what Resident Evil 4 definitely is. It is a homage to the game back in 2005, with all of the benefits of modern gaming: better graphics, better design, better mechanics system, more intricate stuff you can do, more natural feeling controls, all that lovely good stuff. But is this still just a tribute act? The other question to ask, of course, that is definitely relevant is, does it matter as well? That's one of the things that I came up a lot with my discussions with people when I was talking about the demo for RE4. And whether it matters what the previous game was and what this game is. To me, I think if you are to ignore the context that this game is, i.e. that it is a remake of Resident Evil 4, you're either doing a disservice to the original game or you're doing a disservice to this one. It's one or the other. And I think to ignore that context is incorrect, because you have to. If you don't want to have that be the case, don't call it Resident Evil 4. Go make something else. Now, is this game fun? Yeah, I would say so. I've enjoyed my time with this. I think it's been a good spin. While I think it's been a little bit highs and lows, maybe, I've got to say that was also the case with the original, so I'm going to hold that against it. I think some of the things that they've expanded upon, generally speaking, have been improved. You know, I like the parry system. You know, and the fact that the knife then obviously has some durability to it, so you have to kind of be a little bit careful about how you use it. I think the stealth mechanics is a logical inclusion as well, kind of fits with Leon, much like the parrying stuff. I think the characters on the whole are definitely better. Lewis especially has massively benefited from a second look at this game. Much more expanded kind of backstory, more inclusion within the game itself, getting to play as him in the Mercenaries, which will be coming up after this. I think is a lot of fun, and I think is definitely needed. Ashley is, I mean, I guess she's better, but I think it's a bit of a low bar. Although I don't think she was as bad as people made out. It was just kind of an easy, it was an easy stick to try and beat a game with. And escort missions were all the rage back then, and not a lot of them were that great because AI was still not the best. Let's be honest, and it's a lot better now. I think she's got a decent makeover in this one. Her jacket's pretty cool. And obviously kind of trying to make it a bit more independent and kind of growing throughout the game as well, and kind of not being so reliant on Leon and learning from the experiences. But I think ultimately she's not that much different, and I don't think you should look too much into that. But, you know, it's an improvement, I won't lie as that. Other things as well, Krauser's fine, Sadler's fine, I guess. And the rest are kind of ancillary on the side as well. You know, the expanded areas I think are definitely good. Ashley's section on her own I think is a huge improvement what she was originally. I think it was much more improved. The lake was, I think, a bit busy work, but at least they tried to fit in, you know, some extra story you could find, like the old altar, stuff like that. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say Resident Evil 4 is a bad game, because it's not. It's not even close. It's a good game. I would say it's possibly even a great game. It is, I think, out of all the games I've played, probably one of the best remakes of a game I've ever played. And I think that is a fair thing to say. I think mechanically it works really smooth. I think the whole kind of feel of it is obviously, you know, very horror, trying to return to those roots. You know, you've got some pretty bad people. But it plays well, and I can't complain with that from that side of things. And obviously, as I said, benefits from lots of under-the-hood tweaks, and just kind of modern things that we take a bit grinder for now, which wasn't the case back in 2005. But to me, that's all this ever is going to be. I think that's all this ever was going to be. I can sit here and tell you and say that it might be the greatest remake of a game ever. But the problem is that it's a remake of one of the greatest games ever. And those are really big shoes to fill. And shoes which I don't think this can fill. You could debate whether it even tried. And, you know, you could go both ways on that, I suppose. But there was one thing I talked about in this series. I brought up from time to time. This is a good experience, but I was waiting for it to be something truly great. And it never did that for me. Now, I had a bit of time and I thought about it as to why I didn't think that happened for me. I go back to what Ben Crusher Yahtzee said in his review over on The Escapist, where they basically took RE4, found the dial that had campy on one side and serious on the other, and turned it 2 notches to the right. And he's 100% correct. This is a game designed for a 2023 audience. It's a game designed for a wider audience. It is a more sort of streamlined experience in its plot, in its settings, and what it's trying to achieve. It's trying to appeal to as wide a base as possible, which obviously you want to do because ultimately, Capcom are in this business to make money. And that's what it is. This is a capitalist adventure. And obviously some of us have been around for, over 2 decades enjoying these games. You think the first Resident Evil came out in 1996. It's a long, long time ago. That's nearly as long as I've been alive. It is extraordinary that the series is still going. But as I talked about in the old game, I think one of the reasons that I loved it, and one of the reasons I still think fondly of it, is because of its personality. It was a bit of a wildly all-over-the-place game at times. The game would veer from kind of general strolling and a bit of plot development to, holy shit, you're in this crazy hard room where everything wants to kill you, and it's kind of brutal, and it's a little bit unforgiving at times. And Resident Evil 4 original was kind of unforgiving what it to be. But because it was what it wanted to be, it instilled that fear into you. It instilled that concern that at any point, the game could throw anything at you. Because that's exactly what it did. It was more than happy to throw you into these crazy situations against near impossible odds. I'm not just talking about the village area. I mean, throughout the game, it would constantly introduce you to new challenges that you'd have to find ways around. And you'd have to almost try to outsmart the game sometimes, which is something that cannot be said for a lot of adventures. One of the things I found most enjoyable with this game is when it let its hair down. Obviously, you remember when I first walked into the gun range. And I loved it because it was wacky. It was over the top. It was almost unnecessary. But it was the game having fun. Luis in this game, obviously I appreciate the fact he's got a more expanded thing. He was the game having fun. Someone that's obviously a bit kind of cavalier, and that's why it goes into his personality. But it was an outsource for the game to kind of show it when it wanted to be like truly creative and just having a fun with its viewers. Lewis walking around with like his pole as like his spear from some Spanish novel. It's completely absurd, but we love him for it because it's personality, it's character. And I don't think this game has enough of that. I looked hard and deep at this game to see what it would present on the inside. It's just a little too steely for my liking. It's too serious. I think this game is a subject and kind of very much reflects a lot of gaming now in 2023. A lot of these big games, these AAA titles, are overly serious. They're these big, epic, grand adventures. But in doing that, you tend to lose, I think, a bit of the personality. I think of some of the other games that have come out recently, some of these indie titles that have had no build whatsoever, and suddenly come out and everyone's so bad. It's great because they're fun, because they're different, they have character, they've got something about them which a lot of the big titles just I don't think they have enough of nowadays. And that is my sticking point with this game. How would I ultimately rate this experience? If someone came to me and said, would you recommend Resident Evil 4? I would say yes, 100%. I think this game plays incredibly well. I think there's a lot going on. You can kind of play some parts of this game as you want. You can go in guns blazing. You can be a bit more kind of quiet and stealthy about it. I'm playing on hardcore, so you're kind of forced to go a bit more stealthy because of resource limitations. But if you're playing on normal, I think you can probably do whatever you want and you'll probably be fine. So, does the game play well? 100%. Are the characters, on the whole, enjoyable? Yes. Is the plot engaging enough for people? 100%, definitely. And that's why I would recommend this game. I think it's got enough attention to detail. It's got enough callbacks to Resident Evil 4 without being too on the nose at times. And if you've never played the original RE4, it doesn't necessarily matter. You can still come to this game and enjoy it for the experience that it is. And I think for those sorts of reasons, and I think kind of taking from the source material it had, and for building upon the success of Resident Evil 2's and Resident Evil 3 remakes and the successes that they had in their fields, I think this game will receive a nomination for Game of the Year. I think that's fairly likely. I think there's been enough acclaim of this game for all sorts of reasons to definitely warrant that. But am I, someone who's been playing the Resident Evil series for nearly 20 years, gonna come back to this game? I think once it's said and done with the hardcore Mercenaries professional run, I think the answer is no. I don't think, outside of like a stipulation run, I don't think I'll ever play this again. And it's not a criticism of the game. It may just be a criticism of myself. But to me, I can't find this game's soul attractive enough to me. I think its inner spirit, it just feels so constrained by its own inherent limitations of trying to match what it is now. I just don't think this game let itself be enough fun enough of the time. And that's what it affects to me. That I never expected this game to have the same kind of soul as 2005. But I don't know if this game, for me, had enough of a soul. And while this game was never intending to try to reinvent the wheel, you know, to take the Resident Evil series into a brand new direction, like Resident Evil 4 ended up doing, you know, lightning in the bottle, as someone said in the comments section. Which it was, because ultimately there are very few things in any field that gets to have such an impact on not only its own genre, but the medium around it, as Resident Evil 4 did. And as speaking from someone who was playing a lot of games before Resident Evil 4 happened, and then playing Resident Evil 4, and then seeing the series that came after RE4, and how so many of them track back to the original and the third-person shooter style that Resident Evil 4 ended up popularizing and became so widespread across gaming in so many mediums. That is why it is one of the greatest games ever made, because of its legacy and of what it instilled beyond it. You know, you think all sorts of things, you know, from Gears of War to Dead Space to all manner of things beyond it. They all owe their roots back to RE4. Resident Evil 2 Remake owes its roots back to RE4. This game owes its roots back to Resident Evil 2 Remake, realistically, which, of course, again, owes it back to Resident Evil 4. Well, I think this is probably one of the greatest tributes I've ever seen a video game be. To me, that's what this will always be. The greatest tribute act ever. And that's why it won't win Game of the Year. But I've been wrong before. But this is still a really enjoyable game, a great adventure, one that I'm glad I played. But it can't take the place of the original. And it never could. And you know what? That's okay. So, we are going to be having a spin with the Mercenaries optional content for this game. We'll spend a few videos having a delve into that. And then beyond that, we do have the professional run for this game, which I will definitely be playing because, of course I am. Would you expect any different? I'm of course, and I hope you guys have been, giving your thoughts of this game as we go. Those of you that have played it, those of you that haven't, this is your first experience. I do not expect everyone to agree with my thoughts on this game, and I never did. Because ultimately, I think there are two different audiences now. With these remakes. People who have played the originals, and people that haven't. And the two of them want kind of different things at the end. I still think, I would say, if I was introducing someone brand new to the series, I would say the remake of Resident Evil 2 is a fantastic place to start. I think it's just an extraordinary effort for something that was kind of, reinventing the wheel again a little bit, going away from the first-person style and kind of going a bit more back to its roots. And Resident Evil 4 owes some of its success to Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I will stand by that 100%. I would then say, sure, play Resident Evil 3, play Resident Evil 4. Go through these games. I think it's a great trilogy on the whole, and, you could do a lot worse with your money. But I can't lie to you, and I can't say that I've enjoyed this game as much as the original. And that's not nostalgia talking. That's just being... and recognizing, that what the original did, and being in awe for the effect it had. I think that is what will be my ultimate takeaway from this game. A really enjoyable, fun experience. And on several levels, this game is better than Resident Evil 4 in its mechanics and just the overall content of the game and the expansion of the characters. But it was always going to be for me. I don't want to say that this game was impossible to screw up, but it seemed almost impossible for the developers to mess this game beforehand. And I knew it would probably play, officially better than the old game, but it's had nearly 20 years to improve upon that model. But for all the fun that was had, for all the surprises left in store, for all the expansions of previous material that was given, for the super slick presentation of this game, and for the enormous amount of effort that's gone into this on a development level, which I thoroughly appreciate, and I'm very glad for it. And I don't sit here regretting any of the time I spent on this. I wanted this game to connect with me on a deeper level, on a more emotional level, and it just didn't do it. It just didn't connect for me. Not on that level. What a shame. The soul of this game just too steely for me to find that connection. Is this a better game as such than Resident Evil 4? Probably. But it doesn't have the soul. And that has to count for something. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the series. It's been great to have you all with us. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you in the Mercenaries.